Da, 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 da. Happy birthday, dear Andrew's channel. I'll make you a Porsche. Well, hey there, folks. Chuck here, and welcome to another Flying Valiant build right here on the Diecast Media Network. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I am really excited about this build because we are once again celebrating Maple Leaf Customs channel anniversary, and part of that means building a Porsche and giving it away. And this was perfect because our good friend Derek over at Honest Diecast has been doing a lot of awesome work helping us with this channel project, and everything from representing us at Diecast SuperCon to appearing on the show and helping us fill in as Mark is having his wonderful, darling new baby girl. So shout out to Mark and Kimber, by the way, and congrats to them. But I'd been meaning to make Derek a Porsche, and this was a perfect excuse to do that. So I ever so slyly asked him and the other guys, David and Mark, what Porsche I should build, and he suggested the 935, which is, I'm pretty sure, his favorite, one of his favorites, and I've been itching to build this one anyway. So without any further ado, let's get to the breakdown. So as I mentioned, Derek likes the 935, so that was what we started with. I wanted to go with some retro Diecast Media Network themed graphics. More on that in a little bit, but really wanted this thing to embody that late 70s look. I wanted to give it some race weathering, just to make it look like it had been through a particularly tough race with lots of splatter and mud and asphalt kicked up. And wanted to make this kind of a premium feel, so we're going to do some fancy stuff to the wheels and chassis. Ready? Punch that subscribe button. Let's boogie. Breakdown went about as expected. Standard 4-piece with wheels. Paint came off pretty easily. I still miss my old aircraft stripper. This new stuff is not quite as good. There were some heavy seam lines on this car, so I had to get out the paddle wheel and paddle them off and use my round-handled needle files. Again, so much fun to say. Round-handled needle files. And get those seams gone. The nub steering wheel wasn't doing it for me, so I replaced it with a 3D printed one. And I broke out the Gazi, although I did bobble the bottle some, and there were a lot of bubbles, and I had to go back and get the bobbled bubbles busted later. But it turned out better than expected, considering all the froth at the top. I wanted to do some special flip-flop Turbo Dork paint on the bottom of this chassis, which meant it needed a black undercoating. I also probably should have had a bigger needle on my airbrush, but I only have a 0.3 millimeter needle, and this paint, the metal flakes are real chunky. So there was a lot of dry needle bursts and sputters getting it on there, but it did make it on there okay. Now, the car I'm basing this on was white, but doing a white car means you don't get to see my cool white toner printing. So I wanted to give this one a light blue, a little different from the bright blue that I did for the Dodge Murata. So this is a custom mix of metallic medium, pale blue, and a little bit of bright sky blue. And speaking of the original graphics, here's the car that inspired it. This was a Matchbox Porsche 935 that I had growing up, and I got it on a very special visit to the emergency room for an x-ray on a dislocated finger. And I've talked about that on our episode with Charlie Mack, the Matchbox expert, and you can find out why I have an x-ray of a Matchbox Porsche 935 in that video. But I took those graphics and mocked up some of my own. The number 22 is to represent 2022, when Flying Valiant became Diecast Media Network and Diecast Breakdown was born. And of course there are nods all over it to our channel and to Mark's project, drivendreams.org, where we're raising 24,000 cars for kids in need. And, of course, Mr. David Johns over at TWYCE Diecast. And, of course, since this is Derek's car, we're going to give it an Arizona state flag and his name painted under the driver's door. All these decals are over a gloss coat, by the way. I'm getting used to dealing with shiny cars, and it's fun. It's got its own unique sets of challenges from my traditional rusty, dusty builds. And of course, if we're doing a Diecast Media Network car, it needs to tell you to stay fresh at some point. I use microsol on all my decals, even the ones that go on relatively flat surfaces, because it really helps the decals adhere to the paint and softens them up. It makes it a lot easier to do things like cut this hole in the hood. And then apply a little more microsol to make sure that it wraps around and sticks firmly. Some Tamiya black panel liner was perfect for areas like the rear grille and the door panel lines to really make them pop. I did run into a problem. I thought maybe I could sneak some onto the front decal for the hood vents, and that just did not turn out well. So off came the decal, and this is why I always print multiple spares, just in case. I tried doing the panel liner under the hood to see if it would stand out any, and it really didn't. Another benefit of doing all this over a gloss clear coat that's done with acrylic is I can take a little odorless thinner and run a cotton swab over everything once it's dry and take off all of the excess without it hurting the acrylic finish underneath. That's why I always try to go with a solvent-based panel liner over acrylics, or vice versa. Not that I do solvent-based paint often, but it does happen from time to time. Alright, decal is back on. Go through the whole microsol process again. And this time I busted out a permanent marker with a very fine tip, and that did a much better job of making those vents pop. Almost every bit of accent on these 935s is black, so I used tarnished black, because again I try to avoid doing anything that's pure black or pure white. Okay, the decals are definitely pure black and pure white, but you get what I mean. And I took that tarnished black around all of the window brakes and braces and the windshield wipers, and applied it to the driver's seat and dashboard top, as well as the door handles. The interior had 3 cable mounts inside it, so I mimicked the graphics with the red, orange, yellow on the inside, and some panel liner to bring out the edges on the interior. Stuart Simple Mirror paint was perfect for the, mirrors, but it also was great for that Turbo Dork flip-flop paint. This color is called 3D Glasses, by the way. It does a really cool flop from a reddish purple to a deep blue. And with the Stuart Simple Mirror paint on top of it, it's a really nice complement to the Kaido House style that I know Derek really likes. I also made sure that there were a couple of good coats of gloss before I put the mirror paint on the chassis. Seatbelts came in the form of some very fine masking tape that I have. It was a real hassle to work with, but the end result was great. Even as thin as this was, I still had to split it in half to get something that looked like proper seatbelts. And I was really excited about the wheels. This is the first time I've used Van City wheels, and man, are they wonderful. Alright, time to snap everything back together and do the race weathering. I started with a little gunmetal, but then I realized real quick that there's probably not a lot of metal on those fender flares, and switched to a tarnished black and added some light brown and dark brown accents. And did I do pigment too? You bet your asphalt I did. I really like AK Interactive's road pigments. They do a great job of adding that dusty effect that accumulates at the bottom of a car, especially after a race. I went over those slicks too, just to tone them down a little bit. Alright, time for the decal and the number, and build number 68 is in the books. Alright, real quick, let's take one more look at what we started with. This is a really pretty livery that was already on this mainline Porsche 935. It's one of the better looks that I've seen for it, but I think Derek will like what I did a little better. Let's get a final look, and there it is. I'm really pleased with how this one turned out. The blue is interesting. It's different from what I would usually do, but I'm pretty happy with it. Let me know what you think in the comments. And while you're down there, make sure you're hitting the subscribe button, the like, ringing the bell, because we got all sorts of wild diecast content on this channel, including the show Diecast Breakdown, which a lot of you have really been enjoying lately. Thank you so much for that. And if you enjoy what we do, you can support this channel over at diecastmedianetwork.com or by hitting the join button down below. And if you can't support us monetarily, sharing this with your friends is a real good way to help this channel grow. Click around, watch some of the other videos. That tells YouTube that you want to watch more of this kind of stuff. And, of course, I want to thank our patrons that make this show go. You are amazing. Thank you so much. Derek is, of course, one of them, as well as my 2 co-hosts. And I really don't know where this channel would be without them. Well, it frankly wouldn't exist without them and without you joining me on all of these different projects. Again, a very happy returns of the day to Andrew's channel, a wonderful channel that is worth checking out. He does all sorts of wonderful builds, and he gives almost every single one of them away. And I am excited to give this one to Derek as a token of my esteem and as a thank you for being an amazing friend to both the channel and myself. All right, while we're at it, don't forget to check out drivendreams.org and learn how you can help us raising 24,000 cars in 2024 to kids in need all over the world. It's a really good cause, and I'm proud to help Mark and Kimber work on it. And thank you for making it to the end of another build video. As always, I want to thank you for coming along with me for the ride. So until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.